What's the naughtiest thing you ever did?
Oh, goodness me.
Welcome to WatchMojoUK, and today we'll be counting down our picks for the top 10 controversies only British people truly understand.
Big Ben's Brexit bongs hadn't materialised. Instead, clocks, both digital and famously analogue, were projected onto 10 Downing Street.
Before we begin, we publish new content every day, so be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos.
For this list, we're looking at strange controversies that are impossible to explain to outsiders. Let us know in the comments which you think is the most baffling. Number 10. Fields of wheat. Looking back, it's strange that this became such a big issue for Theresa May's tenure in number 10 of all the things.
Nobody's ever perfectly behaved, are they?
During one now infamous interview, May was asked what the naughtiest thing she'd ever done was, and she replied with this anecdote.
I have to confess, when me and my friends sort of used to run through the fields of wheat, the farmers weren't too pleased about that.
People were quick to point out that between dropping bombs on the Middle East and sending go-home vans around diverse areas of the UK to drive out immigrants, this certainly wasn't the naughtiest thing she'd ever done.
So the Home Secretary has admitted defeat over her controversial go-home advertising vans aimed at illegal immigrants.
But the soundbite plagued her forever, and she later said that that answer was one of the biggest mistakes she ever made. And yet, in hindsight, it was a completely inane controversy. Number 9. Neil Buchanan is Banksy.
A step away from street art, this is Banksy's graffiti rendered into 3D. Can I buy one? With some of his traditional themes and some new and shocking ones.
Though he is British, Banksy is a well-known name globally. However, Neil Buchanan, best known for hosting Art Attack on CITV for years, certainly isn't.
This is an art attack? This is an art attack. This is Art Attack!
Somehow though, a conspiracy theory began to circulate in 2020 that Buchanan had been moonlighting as the provocative graffiti artist for years.
Ah, hello there. Now then, have you got a really special photograph that you want to frame but can't afford one of those fancy, expensive frames?
Never mind that one of the few things we know about Banksy is that he's from Bristol and Buchanan is from Lancashire. Buchanan was still forced to publicly deny the allegations that he was Banksy. Then again, if he was Banksy, that's exactly what he would say, no matter how little sense it made.
Television journalist, perhaps the only one who has actually met the artist in person, and I can tell you, that's definitely not him.
Number 8. Wagatha Christie. Though athletes around the world have significant others, only in the UK are they known as WAGs.
We're hearing from the Press Association that Rebekah Vardy has lost that High Court libel case.
Despite most of them basically just being famous for dating or marrying a footballer, they're still bizarrely influential in some parts of British culture, including now the legal system, apparently.
Colleen Rooney defended herself on the grounds of truth and public interest during what has been a very high-profile trial.
The UK also has very strict libel laws, and this all coalesced to send two WAGs, Rebekah Vardy and Colleen Rooney, to court to fight over whether an Instagram post amounted to defamation of character.
And as you can imagine, this has caught the attention of the global press and has become known as Wagatha Christie trial.
It was an absurd media circus, difficult to explain to anybody who wasn't already following the case, let alone someone from a different country. Number 7. Ding Dong, the Witch is Dead. In other countries, former leaders are often viewed with so much reverence that something like this couldn't happen. It's hard to imagine, in the United States for instance, any president's death being celebrated like this in the mainstream, regardless of how unpopular they may have been when alive.
And what are you protesting?
The past, what was done to the miners, what will never be repaired.
Not the case for the UK, when our most polarising PM in history, Margaret Thatcher, died in 2013, and a campaign to get Ding Dong, the Witch is Dead to number 1 in the charts nearly succeeded. Ding dong, the witch is dead. Witch, oh, witch. Ding dong, the witch is dead. The ostensibly non-partisan BBC refused to play the song. Meanwhile, people were simultaneously grieving and burning effigies in public spaces.
How have you managed to get in? Oh, you're probably something incredibly important.
Well, since we're both Tory MPs, it's an all Tory MPs.
Sorry, John.
Number 6. The price of Freddos.
We're getting a lot of complaints because every time we order stock, we have to put the prices up, unfortunately.
In the midst of a spiralling cost of living crisis and a long-running economic decline dating all the way back to 2008, there's one metric you can always trust to reliably tell you the true rate of inflation: the price of a Freddo.
She gave one special kiss to the shy prince, which turned him into Freddo, and they've been partying ever since.
Originally costing 10p for the humble chocolate frog in the early 90s, the Freddo now costs a whopping 25p in some retailers, though in the past it's been as high as 30p. While this is exactly on par with the rate of inflation, at least until it shot through the roof in 2022, it still hasn't stopped people from being consistently irate about the chocolate bar's 150% price increase over the last 30 years. Number 5. Poppies. The world wars affected nearly every country in the world, but the yearly gutter press reports about wearing poppies remain UK specific.
They've popped up in all sorts of places, from puppets to toasters, causing tensions between those who support it as well as those who don't.
Up until recently, wearing a poppy every November was a way to remember the horrors of war, in the hope that if we don't forget the millions who gave their lives, we can stop similarly devastating conflicts from happening again.
They say, lest we forget today, but they have dropped out never again, I guess, because they know it would never come true. There will always be wars.
But the sombre poppies have become another casualty in endless culture war debates in the tabloids, with many now saying the poppy has lost its intended meaning as a symbol of remembrance, including many veterans, and others saying it's impossible to respect Britain's war dead without one.
Another footballer, James McClean, has received death threats and abuse for his decision not to wear it in 2012.
Number 4. One Britain, One Nation Day.
We're officially at the Hitler Youth stage of this government. No thank you, my child will not be participating.
In June 2019, the bizarre One Britain, One Nation campaign finally succeeded in getting into British schools. The result was the Department of Education urging schools up and down the country to sing a newly written anthem about Britain, all about how Britain tried to unite everybody in the world. Not that the countries we were uniting particularly liked it.
We are Britain and we have one dream, to unite all people in one great team.
Despite the support of senior Tories, One Britain, One Nation Day was a disaster, being widely derided as propaganda and an attempt to brainwash Britain's children. It struck people as a way to make Britain more like the US, with total uncritical patriotism, which people didn't like.
You know, this is just propaganda North Korea stuff.
North Korea.
Let's deal with our children. Let's give them food.
Number 3. Horse meat. Though the horse meat scandal affected many countries in Europe, only in the UK was the taboo against horse meat so massive it caused public outrage.
The experts say the discovery of horse meat masquerading as beef in some Findus lasagnas poses no immediate human health risk.
While not knowing exactly where your meat products came from and what was in them was bad, and was the reason governments around Europe took it seriously, people in Britain were horrified at the idea of eating horse meat unwittingly.
The police are now involved investigating whether the horse meat got into products through gross negligence or through criminal action.
Horse meat, however, remains a popular meat in other countries, including Switzerland, Poland, and France.
There's no reason to believe that any frozen food currently on sale is unsafe or a danger to health.
But the taboo here remains strong, with lots of people viewing eating a horse much like eating a beloved pet, despite there being nothing fundamentally wrong with the meat. Number 2. Piggate. Is this the weirdest scandal in British history? Probably not, but it's still an inherently British thing to have happened.
So there are all sorts of mad allegations involving pigs' heads and weird bits of one's body and affairs and so on.
Not only was the rumour started by a Tory peer who had a grudge against David Cameron for not letting him buy his way into the cabinet, but the scandal hinged upon an absurd initiation ritual for an elite dining club at Oxford.
There is apparently photographic evidence of the event, which made me wonder, terrible, was the pig wearing a GoPro?
As we all know, it was alleged by the Lord Ashcroft that Cameron had gotten up to no good with the head of a pig in order to gain entry to the Piers Gaveston Dining Society.
That photo was before digital cameras. Who took that film to Snappy Snaps?
Even weirder was the link between this and the first episode of Black Mirror, though perhaps that was where Ashcroft got the idea from. Number 1. Brexit.
Very few ceremonial moments to speak of. We can show you, however, one or two which are highly symbolic. And let's just start with the lowering of the Union flag.
Massive as the impacts of Brexit are, with the polarising issue affecting every aspect of life in the UK since 2016, it's still a totally baffling event to people beyond this country.
The plaque has been removed, and in its place a new plaque. It's called UKMIS, which stands for the UK's mission to the European Union.
Many of our neighbours on the European continent still don't understand why Brits voted to leave the European Union in 2016, nor do the Americans, and political analysts are still trying, and often failing, to pass Brexit's effects.
UK-bound produce will also face new controls delayed by the British government.
Only people in this country really understand why we chose to leave the EU. But for myriad deeply complex reasons, we did leave the EU on the 31st of January 2020 after almost 50 years in the Union.
Big Ben's Brexit bongs hadn't materialised. Instead, clocks, both digital and famously analogue, were projected onto 10 Downing Street.
Do you agree with our picks? Check out this other recent clip from WatchMojoUK and be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos.